What if a thunderstorm rolled in tomorrow, and the only roof you have is the sky itself? Could you raise a home from the forest, just like our ancestors did 10,000 years ago? In the next 24 hours, we'll find out, using nothing but what nature hands us. Think you could survive a night under a shelter you built from scratch? Let's jump in. I'm out here in the heart of this ancient wood, where every tree, every stone, holds a story of people who learned to live with the land, not against it. Today, we're taking on the 24-hour primitive shelter challenge. No metal tools, no pre-made canvas, no synthetic rope, only stone-shaped axe, bark, saplings, and the knowledge that was passed down around campfires for generations. By the end of this journey, you'll see exactly how to pick the right spot, harvest the right materials, master the old-world lashing, and finish a weatherproof home that could actually keep you safe and warm. First, we have to find the perfect location. A good shelter starts with a good site. I'm walking through the underbrush, looking for 4 key criteria: protection from the wind, easy access to fresh water, natural drainage to keep the floor dry, and a spot that blends into the surroundings for camouflage. I've got a simple scoring sheet in mind, 0 to 5 points for each factor. The ridge behind that stand of pines scores high on wind shelter. The nearby creek gives us water. The slight dip in the ground ensures runoff, and the surrounding brush hides the shelter from view. I mark the corners with flat stones, setting the boundaries for our build. Now, the hunt for materials begins. Young hardwood saplings will become our main poles, while flexible willow shoots make perfect braces. The bark of birch trees, once soaked, can be twisted into strong cordage. I strip a wide piece of bark, soak it in the creek for about 3 hours, then begin the twisting process. The fibers interlock, and as they dry, they become as tough as any modern rope. A quick tip: the longer you let the bark soak, the more pliable it gets, and the stronger the final line. I also gather a bundle of pine needles and dried grass for thatch, and a handful of moss for insulation. With cordage in hand, we start building the framework. The classic A-frame is our backbone. I drive 2 sturdy saplings into the ground at a 90-degree angle, then lift a third pole across the top to form the ridge. The corners are secured using mortise and tenon lashings, simple loops of bark cord that tighten under tension. I pull each knot tight, listening for the slight creak that tells me the joints are solid. On the leeward side, I add a lean-to wall to block gusts, using additional willow braces and more bark rope. A time-lapse shows the skeleton rising against the clearing sky, each joint a testament to ancestral engineering. Next comes the skin that will keep the rain out. I layer pine needles and dried grass across the roof, overlapping each strip like shingles. The thatch is then packed down and sealed with a mud-clay plaster made from creek water and fine earth, pressed into the gaps with a flat stone. Inside, I spread a thick mat of moss on the floor for insulation and line the walls with bark panels to keep the wind from seeping in. A small fire pit is dug in the center, its pit lined with stones to contain the heat, and a simple door flap woven from bark hides the entrance while still allowing airflow. As the clouds thicken and a light drizzle begins, the water beads on the thatch and runs straight off, leaving the interior dry. You can see the droplets sliding across the layers, the mud plaster holding firm, the moss floor staying warm. It's a living proof that these age-old techniques still work in the face of nature's fury. If you're finding this valuable, hit that subscribe button and let's keep exploring together. The night settles in, and the forest comes alive with the subtle chorus of crickets, owls, and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. I light the fire pit, and the kindling catching with a soft crackle that seems to push the darkness back a little further. The flames dance, casting a golden glow across the bark walls and the moss-lined floor. And for a moment, the shelter feels more like a home than a temporary structure. I pull a dry branch from the fire, feeling the heat radiate through the wood, and settle onto the moss mat, letting the warmth seep into my bones. As the temperature drops, the thatch roof does its job without a whisper of water slipping through. The mud clay plaster holds firm, and the overlapping pine needles create channels that guide any moisture away from the interior. I watch a single droplet travel down the slope of the roof, disappearing into the earth below. And I'm reminded of the simple physics our ancestors understood instinctively. The wind picks up, and brushing the canopy above, but the lean-to wall on the leeward side stands as a shield, deflecting gusts that might otherwise have rattled the frame. With the fire humming, I take a moment to reflect on the process that brought this shelter into being. The first step, choosing the site, taught me how the land itself can dictate comfort and safety. The second, gathering materials, showed the abundance that surrounds us when we look closely enough. The third, crafting cordage, reminded me that patience and repetition turn raw fibers into something as strong as any modern rope. And the final, assembling the frame and skin, proved that ancient engineering still rivals contemporary design when it comes to resilience and efficiency. And now comes the true test of habitability. Can I spend a full night inside this structure without feeling exposed or uneasy? I close the bark flap door, listening to the muffled sounds of the forest beyond, and settle back onto the moss. The fire continues to crackle, its heat rising in gentle waves. I pull a piece of bark and use it to fashion a simple sleeping pad, layering it over the moss for extra insulation. The scent of pine and earth fills the air, a natural perfume that has no synthetic counterpart. The night deepens, and I find myself drifting between wakefulness and sleep, the fire's glow flickering like a heartbeat. At one point, a sudden gust rattles the outer bark panels, and I instinctively tighten a few of the bark cords, feeling the tension snap back into place. It's a small adjustment, but it reinforces the idea that maintenance is a continuous part of living in harmony with the environment. The shelter responds, staying sturdy, keeping the wind at bay, and preserving the warmth inside. When dawn finally breaks, the forest awakens in a soft palette of amber and green. Sunlight filters through the canopy, spilling golden light onto the thatch roof, turning the pine needles into a delicate tapestry of light and shadow. I rise, stretch my limbs, and step out of the shelter, feeling the cool morning air on my face. The fire pit is reduced to a bed of warm embers, still faintly glowing, a reminder of the night's warmth. I examine the structure once more, noting the subtle shifts that occurred overnight. A few bark cords have settled tighter, the mud clay plaster has dried a shade darker, and the moss floor is slightly compressed, forming a comfortable imprint where I slept. I take a moment to document the final state, capturing close-up shots of the lashing points, the thatch layers, and the interior layout. These images will serve as a visual guide for anyone who wants to replicate this experiment, showing that the techniques not only work in theory, but hold up under real conditions. I also record a short voice note, describing the sensations of sleeping within a shelter built entirely from nature, emphasizing the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your roof will not collapse. Your walls will keep out the cold, and your fire will stay contained. Reflecting on the entire process, I realized that this challenge was more than just a test of skill. It was a reconnection with a lineage of knowledge that has been passed down through generations. often without written record. The act of pulling a sapling from the earth, shaping it, and coaxing it into a functional form echoes the daily lives of early humans who survived by reading the landscape, respecting its limits, and using its gifts wisely. In a world where most of us rely on manufactured materials and instant solutions, this experience reminds us of the power of patience, observation, and manual craftsmanship. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried building a shelter using only natural materials? What challenges did you face, and what solutions did you discover? If you haven't yet, does this demonstration inspire you to give it a go on your next backcountry adventure? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a conversation about how we can bring these ancient practices into modern outdoor life. For those who enjoyed watching this transformation from raw forest to functional home, consider giving this video a thumbs up. Your support helps the channel grow and allows us to explore more hands-on projects that bridge the gap between past and present. If you're curious about other primitive techniques, like making stone tools, fire starting without matches, or creating natural dyes, let me know in the comments, and I'll prioritize those topics for upcoming episodes. Before we wrap up, I want to highlight a few key takeaways that you can apply right away. First, you always assess the site carefully. Look for natural windbreaks, good drainage, and proximity to water without exposing yourself to flooding. Second, when crafting cordage, soak your fibers long enough to achieve flexibility, then twist them tightly to maximize strength. Third, use the mortise and tenon lashing method for joints, as it distributes load evenly and can be adjusted as the structure settles. Fourth, layer your roof with overlapping thatch and seal the gaps with a simple mud-clay mixture. This combination provides both waterproofing and insulation. Finally, incorporate a fire pit with stone lining to contain heat safely and keep the interior warm throughout the night. These principles form the backbone of a resilient shelter that can stand up to rain, wind, and cold, all while using only what the environment offers. By mastering these basics, you'll be better prepared for unexpected weather, emergency situations, or simply a deeper immersion into the wilderness. As we pack up our tools and begin to leave the shelter behind, I take one last look at the structure, feeling a sense of respect for the craftsmanship that went into it. The bark cords hold tight, the thatch roof still looks sturdy, and the fire pit's embers fade into the earth, becoming part of the forest once more. It's a reminder that any creation we make can be both temporary and lasting, depending on how we care for it and the intention behind it. Thank you for joining me on this 24-hour primitive shelter challenge. If you found value in this journey, please consider subscribing so you won't miss future explorations into ancient skills and modern applications. Your likes, shares, and comments are the fuel that keeps this channel thriving. And I'm grateful for every bit of support. Until the next adventure, stay curious, stay resilient, and keep learning from the land.